All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Jack. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Yeah. Welcome all to Talk Openly. Whether you're here joining us on Zoom or on Facebook, it's lovely to have you. Daniel, we're going to be talking about a few different topics tonight. We're taking a turn away from viewer questions just for this week, but I imagine we might come back to them soon because it's been so fun to do that. But before we do that, I'd love to check in, and also I got to point out, you were just holding up a pretty cool mug, just casually.
Can I show you? Can I? Okay,
Please.
I'm gonna hold it up again. So this is a meditating mushroom.
It sure is.
Okay, but let me turn it around. A meditating mushroom with a cup of tea.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
That is so nice.
That is generated by artificial intelligence and printed by some random company on the mug.
Wow. That's incredible that could be into existence.
I know, I love it. I have a few different mugs like that. I made one for Llama based upon a joke that I heard at Expressions. So there was a gentleman who came in and he told this joke at one of the Expressions about a 1L llama. Everybody knows what an L, there's a spiritual leader, that's a 1L llama. And of course, the animal, that's a 2L llama, but there's no such thing as a 3L llama, right? And so he made some kind of a joke about that. And then our llama got up and he said, actually, there is a 3L llama. It's when you have a major fire in the city of Boston. And then if you say it like with a Boston accent, it's a 3L llama. Right?
Oh, nice.
So, and I wish I actually had it, but the mug that I gave him has like a very like llama, like a very spiritual looking llama, right? That's just like one part. But the other part on the other side, it has a firefighter in the middle of a blaze in Boston. The firefighter is wearing monk's robes, right?
Whoa.
And he has a companion firefighter that's a llama. And so like my joke was, now we actually have, this is a 6L llama mug.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really cool. I need to explore those the AI generated images. I feel like you could really go down the rabbit hole with that.
Oh my God. Easily waste a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
So and money, I think.
Yeah. So maybe good to avoid. Maybe good for a gift. But in general, maybe I should.
I think they're great gifts. Really, seriously, they're awesome gifts and easy too. Like people like it. It's a nice personalized thing, right?
Yeah. So. Oh, fun. Well, Daniel, tell me a little bit about how you doing this week. I want to hear about what's been going on in your world.
Well, nothing too remarkable, I don't think, like life-wise. I'm kind of excited because my brother and my half-brother, his half-brother are coming to visit me for a whole week. They are my business partners, so I'm super excited about that. I've never met one of them, even though I've worked with them for 10 years now. so I'm kind of excited about that. But what I wanted to briefly mention was that I woke up really pissed off today. Yeah, I thought that was newsworthy, actually. Because I don't normally find myself like that. And there was no cause that I was aware of, like I literally just like woke up and I was mad. I was just angry, like, and I got kind of lost in it. I was just like, this is whatever.
Just grumbling, yeah.
Just grumbling, and the good news is I always feel better when I go outside. So I take my dog out for a walk. And I'm still grumbling, like she stops to smell, like she normally does. Normally I just that's why I'm out walking. So I just leave her, let her do her thing. And today I was like, come on, it's time, we're walking, we're going, like I was really sort of like in this space, right? Yeah. And then I was like, well, then I thought, well, wait a second, hang on, let me apply some of my training here, like whatever. And I got to witness the self-liberation of anger. And that was really quite beautiful. Like I just watched it. I just was like, oh, look at, like, that's what's going on. I don't have to know the cause. I don't know why it's like this, but it is this way. And just look at that, like, okay, so that's what that's like, right? And And then and I knew like, I had this sort of idea like, oh, it's self-liberating, but I couldn't like force it to go away. I just had to sort of like be aware of it. Like, okay, there that is. Okay.
Right.
And then within, I'd say like 10 minutes or so, it just like lifted like clouds, just dissipated. And the rest of the day went totally normal without any bad mood or anything. Right.
Right.
Isn't that cool?
It is so cool. And yeah, it's amazing just how much our mind can do to really create the agony of an affliction, where it's like, okay, maybe the affliction comes up where it's like, oh, we'll have a strong emotion or something, but really the suffering comes from when we just pile it on, like, God, why am I feeling this way? And like, why is this happening to me this morning? I can't deal with this right now because I'm tired, like, and we just pile it on until it's like really actually unbearable.
Right. So true. So I narrowly missed a disaster this morning.
Wow.
Thanks to my training. So I thought that's like to me, it was really kind of a highlight of the day, right? Like it didn't feel very good at the moment, but now in hindsight, it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it shows that your training works, which is an exciting thing. And that's why Lojong has become such an important part of my morning practice, is that I kind of review a few of them that like really matter for me and where I'm at. One of them is, when the world is full of evil, transform all mishaps into the path of Bodhi, and drive all blames into one, and be grateful to everyone. And those just really help like recenter my mind when I get into those kind of like just kind of habitual emotional patterns and whatnot, where it's like, wait a minute, this is nothing. This is just my brain doing its dumb darn thing.
Right. And you don't need to sleepwalk your way through it. You can kind of wake up and watch.
Right. And then it can actually be interesting. You can be curious about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I haven't always taken that sort of attitude, but
me neither. Me neither.
Have you had a lot of Lojong application this week? What's going on with you?
Well, it's so funny that you bring up that you had this kind of random anger this morning, because I also had a random anger morning yesterday. Okay. And it's funny. I'm just going to be real out in the open here, because I think that's part of what Talk Openly is all about. And I think it's something that Lama said on Sunday when I actually asked him a question after his talk, like, how do we know if we're just kind of hanging out on the diving board? That's a metaphor that he uses a lot, where, he can guide people up to the diving board, but he's not going to push. Right. And so, I asked him, how do I know if I'm just hanging out on the diving board? And what I got from his response was that, you kind of, you're not putting yourself out there, and there's not necessarily this struggle or intensity of like, I'm kind of on the spot here, So anyways, coming back to being on the spot, I have a lot of struggles with jealousy. Jealousy has
yours or other people's?
My jealousy. I struggle with internal jealousy, and it's been something that's followed me for a long time, and that I've fed. It's a very well fed demon for me, right? But anyways, so Sunday night, my partner went out for a study session with his classmates. And I was like, great, that's cool, wonderful, get some social time, study. And then I found out after the fact that it was just with one person, one other female person. And I was kind of like, well, wait a minute, that feels a little bit different, Ooh. Thought it was like a study session with like a group of people. And what was interesting is that I overheard this while I was doing a meditation. So I was in sitting meditation, and he comes home and he's talking to my roommate, and I can hear them talking. And I'm just like, wow, this is really surging up. Like, and it was so subtle, the types of like things that my mind began to start like telling itself,
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, that like, oh, are they kind of like interested in each other? Do they like each other? And to be open, like we are in an open relationship, we're polyamorous or whatnot. But still there's jealousy. It's still a very strong thing. And so even though that's something that's allowed, it's like, well, but I want to know about it and I want to know everything. And but it was just so funny to see my mind do that and to feel like that anxiety and pressure and like the twisted guts. And so I was just really like, okay, now this is it. This is it. Drive all blames into one. This is not anything about what's happening in this situation of going out and studying. That this is all me and I know it, So I really, really sat with that and also tried to apply what I learned from a talk by Tubton Chodron, where one of her strategies is that whenever she feels a really strong, intense emotion, she tries to put it on the ego as kind of like, okay, I don't want the ego anyways. I want to get rid of the ego. So how about I put all this blame, all this shame, all this jealousy, give it all to that, So I worked on doing that. And sure thing, I can't say that it was fully gone by the end of my meditation. But it really, really brought it down. And evened out. And what was great is that I haven't brought it up to Eric. Like I don't feel the need to be like, hey, what happened here? Like you didn't tell me, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, I'm not bothered. It just,
well, what's weird about that too is that type of the jealousy obviously comes from some type of insecurity or whatever, and then that type of insecurity is really unattractive to other people. And so what's interesting about it is like Eric might have just been off, he was just doing a study session and wasn't even thinking about it, right? Maybe possibly, let's just say, right? And then if you were to confront him and be like, what the hell was that all about? I thought it was a group and we had this understanding and I thought you would have told me and all of that, then you would have had like a double-edged thing. On the one hand, you would appear less attractive. And this idea, this possibility that maybe you hadn't been considering would be like an attractive alternative.
Right. I know. It's amazing how we can really spin this web that then gets us caught in everything that we didn't want in the first place.
That's right. That's right. I like what you brought up about what Tubton Chodron said. I had an experience. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think it's kind of neat. It's like what you're talking about. So I like to help out with the expressions thing on the last Friday of every month. And so I'd gotten there this last Friday early and was like, doing all kinds of stuff, right? And it was kind of a little bit stressful because there was like a lot to do within a limited amount of time and whatever, things were a little off. And so whatever, go about my thing. Turned out it was a great event, lots of people, lots of support, everything.
Nice.
And at one point, Lama gets up and, it's at the end and he's like thanking all the people, this and that. And he left me out. He didn't say my name. And I was blown away. Well, I had this experience. So what happened was I was like this, like a hurt feeling, right? And I'm like, maybe, why am I even doing this? Why did I show up early? Why did I blah, 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 right? So I noticed that, I started seeing it. And then I did not do this intentionally whatsoever, but it's what Tubton Chodron, I think, is talking about, which is, I was like, oh, look, there it is. I can see it. It's like putting, like the ghost, there's no real ghost there, but like it's ephemeral, it doesn't have a body, but if you throw a sheet over it, right, then you can see it. It's like that. So like there was this like feeling that went around this ego and it let me really just like see it. And then I had this like, wait, but that's empty. There's nothing there. And so what is this, it was sort of like this, like it just like canceled everything out. And I was like, oh, everything's fine. Like there's not a problem, right? But I think that what was really neat about it was that experience of like splashing paint or throwing flour or dust on a ghost, so to speak, right? Like you can see it. And now you can do something about it. Like, that's so cool.
That's awesome. That means that what's been hidden and buried behind ignorance and delusion is starting to show its face a little bit.
Maybe that's a little bit about this morning too, right? Like I've been so ignorant
Yeah.
and deluded. Now I get a little bit of what do you call it? Not, I don't think it's jealousy, but whatever the feelings are associated with not getting praise, right?
Mhm.
And then a little
Being
anger,
forgotten.
you know, like that's good stuff. It
That
doesn't
is
feel good
good
in the
stuff.
moment, but I think that if we can take the right attitude towards it, it can be pretty helpful.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about how maybe that's like your anger this morning was maybe like an after effect of kind of opening up that space within you. And I also noticed that yesterday morning I woke up just feeling like exhausted. I was so exhausted, and it was like, yeah, jealousy literally makes me sick. Literally makes me sick.
Oof.
And to be able to witness that and see just how much these narratives that I get myself into are not serving even my
Mm,
relatives this life at all.
no, no.
It's just making poison within me. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
we
So we
have
can be
some juicy
grateful for these
stuff.
negative emotions, right? We can be
Yeah,
grateful for them. Like that's so cool to be able to see that, right? Like what you're talking about. Like jealousy is draining, right? So like to be able to confront it, see it, and then to maybe deal with it skillfully like you did. It's helpful. Yay, it's working.
yay.
It's working, Jack.
It's working. I love it. Well, what do you say? Should we talk about some talky stuff?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Also, if there's anybody who's in Zoom land, feel free to. I think there's a chat button. I think there might be a questions and answers section. Feel free to use those if you want to chime in or ask some questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Daniel, we had a little bit of a list going on. And one of the topics we thought we'd bring up is that of equanimity. And I'm curious, what your thoughts are on equanimity, what you've learned so far. What do you know?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like I oftentimes thought equanimity was directly related to just people, holding some people close and others distant, so to speak. I didn't, I never really thought about it just in terms of, like aversion and attraction, right? Like this, like that is just general, right? Like being in the center and not being pulled off by whatever's happening. And it sort of makes me think, like, it reminds me of this poster I one time saw on like an AA recovery hall. And the poster it said, serenity is not freedom from the storm, but peace amid the storm.
Yeah.
And I think what they're calling serenity is similar to what I kind of think of as equanimity now, you know? And the other thing that I think is kind of the other thing that I'm not quite clear on, maybe you can help me with this, maybe we can talk it out. But I have had a decent in my life. I've had a lot of experience with apathy and indifference. And it's kind of hard for me to tell the difference, like between like, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, right? Like, because I do have sort of like, I can have like a rather indifferent or apathetic approach to things, right?
Mhm.
And it is, I know that they're qualitatively quite different from equanimity, right? But I think that there's some similarities, right, between the two of them, right?
Hmm.
Like there's between
Yeah.
apathy and equanimity.
Well, I can see how in both apathy and equanimity, there's a little bit, there's like a stepping back and kind of viewing things from a little bit outside of maybe a subjective position. I just imagine a little bit of stepping back.
Yeah,
But what I noticed for myself with apathy is that there's a somewhat of an edge of not caring.
yeah,
And it's a state that I think really aligns with when I'm feeling depressed. And when I'm feeling depressed, I think one of my coping strategies has been to kind of step back and not be engaged, but in a really, just kind of a distanced way. And I think that has been okay for me. And in those times when I've needed to do that, I'm not necessarily dissing it, but the difference with equanimity from what I've read and what I feel like I'm starting to understand a little bit more personally is that it's a stepping back from my personal subjective biases, but it is full of love. There's an intensity there where I'm no longer, and this is me, this is the ideal, right? So I'm no longer coming at it from my personal bias, but I'm seeing everybody as beautiful, excellent, and capable of developing these wonderful qualities that we're working on in Buddhist practice. And so it's that objectivity that we are all capable of doing this.
Yeah.
But it's not disconnected. Whereas, apathy,
Right.
There's a disconnection.
That's right.
Yeah. Equanimity is like, yes, we all can do this. And it's freaking incredible. So there's joy, there's love, there's compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's like the turning off the heat, or like becoming really kind of cold, indifferent, or apathetic it's a form of aversion, right? Like I just can't, and therefore I'm just going to turn off, right? And so like I think that, again, part of the reason perhaps that I can't is because I don't like the reaction that's happening, right? Whatever's coming up, right? Like, so something's going on, perhaps I perceive it as negative, and then instead of kind of leaning into it, right, with awareness and compassion, like instead I'm like, whoa, I can sense this reactivity going on, and instead of dealing with that, I'm just going to shut it all off. Like nothing's coming through, nothing's going to happen. It's like a protection, it's self-protection of some sort, and I think that like that's given way, right? It's like on a similar spectrum. I think that it has actually given way to greater equanimity, which to me what I take it as is this like very, very present, very aware, but it is so aware, so present with whatever's happening that you're not being pulled in a particular direction, right? Just like in our meditation practice, the practice we develop equanimity by watching our mind and watching as we start to become attracted to some things and chase after them, or we become like we don't want to have other thoughts, and so we try to reject them. And so like I think that the practice of meditation is actually a practice that develops equanimity, right? So that we can be present, be aware, but not be so highly reactive. So it's actually equanimity is the solution to the problem that I was experiencing that led to apathy and indifference. So to me, like apathetic indifference seemed like a tool, right? And it's one that my family, my whole family is like, we're really good at it, right? Like we can be like super hot and on, but then as soon as we, problems start to show up, we just like click, done. Not going to be a problem anymore, right? Just like that. But that leads to other problems, and it leads to this cutting off, right? It leads to this. It's a chilling. It's a deadening. It doesn't connect us with other people. It doesn't help us connect with our own reality, right? With what's happening. Instead, it like cuts us off. And I think like equanimity, to me, the development of equanimity really is the countermeasure to that. Like, no, I do still want to be present. I want to be aware. I don't want to be reactive. That part's true. I really don't, because I'm not, like, my reactions typically aren't all that helpful, but I do want to be active. I want to be engaged. I want to stay connected. And the way to do that is to develop some sense of equanimity.
Yeah. It really is that antidote to that kind of like resisting to engage and, be present. And also that antidote to over involvement and picking sides and being biased. I think it's interesting that you brought up apathy, because I think it's a way that I've similar to what you were saying, it's been kind of like a spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
I love that term, because it really makes a lot of sense to me, that there's so many ways that I can use what might seem like spirituality or spiritual practice, and I can actually use it just to ignore what's actually going on.
I've done my fair share of that, Jac.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying, like I was like, oh yeah, no, this is equanimity, me just shutting down, cutting out, whatever. And then, like you said, that's just spiritual bypass. It's not it's not doing what we needed to do.
Oh man. Have you noticed, has there been anything that's kind of stood out to you recently that you felt was maybe a moment that equanimity was perhaps blossoming in you?
Well, I think that, so one of my greatest teachers is my ex-wife, mother of my children, with whom I still have I'm still engaged with. We're co-parenting the children, and I have noticed actually a great deal of equanimity developing in that relationship. So I have a strong aversion to her and engaging with her. And so in the beginning, I did what I was saying, totally just like cut off, don't engage, don't anything, which is not co-parenting. Actually, that's not a way to be a parent to your children, right? by cutting off and disengaging from their other parents, right? That's not helpful. But it was really difficult, because I was like, the hell am I supposed to do? Because I get so reactive. Like I just, like it just takes one word, or it doesn't take much at all. And so it's been years, actually. I think that like since I started my Buddhist studies, I think that I've been able to use my relationship with her to develop this, right? Like to practice all kinds of things that led to greater equanimity. So that now actually there's still stuff like in the past week, that's why I'm bringing her up, right? Because it's so recent, like there's some engagement, some stuff back and forth where like I can see my intense dislike. I can see my anger, frustration, annoyance. Oh, I can see all of it, I can see her faults as well, right? I can see all of it, but it doesn't go the same way as before. So it actually allows me to practice something that I learned way before I started Buddhism, or, studying Buddhism, which was something that was, it's a therapeutic style developed by Tara Brach, called acceptance and commitment therapy. And so acceptance being like first being aware and seeing things and being like, yes, that is how they are. Not putting up some kind of resistance, like it's not the way it's supposed to be, but just like, yep, that's how it is. And so then the next step is like, all right, what am I going to do about it? Right. And so I can notice my own, like whatever in my engagement, my communications, I'll have like a first sort of like, oh, I have all kinds of mean texts or emails or thoughts, oh, I'm going to say this and no. And then I'm like, wait, okay, none of that's actually all that helpful, right? Like I can see how it is. I can see how I got here, how she got here. Okay, but what do I really want to have happen here? Like what do I really want the outcome to be? And what's the best way to get there? And that has led to the relationship itself changing, right? And it makes it easier for us to engage with each other and to be good parents, right? Is that I've been able to drop a lot of it. I'm not saying it's all gone.
Yeah, totally.
But like it's more like I can see, like it's like there's like a gap. So before there was no gap between my experience and my reactivity, like zero, not even milliseconds, just one led to the other. Whereas now there's like, it can be huge. The gap can be hours or days or even longer. Where I'm like, oh, I see it. And I'm just gonna like not react in that way. I'm just gonna like try to tackle things and make it be the way that I want it to be, right? Try to act more skillfully. I think that's probably the place that I've developed the greatest amount of equanimity. That and my meowing cat.
And your what? Your cat?
My meowing cat. Meowing at all the inappropriate times, but
Yep.
there's a lot of I think that it's like I don't think equanimity necessarily, like, it's not related to any particular experience, right? It's a state or a way of being. And I do sense that it's grown a lot. Like, I feel that way anyway. I'm sure there's plenty of room to go, but I feel like it's grown a lot. What about you? What are your experiences?
Yeah, I was kind of recognizing that as we were talking about our last couple days and strong emotions and whatnot, that my reaction time to my emotions has also, really, really, the gap is widening. And I think that's because I've been working on have you read the book Mind at Ease by Traleg Kyabgon?
No.
It's really, really awesome. He has a lot of different meditation exercises and techniques. And one of them that I find really helpful is on equanimity. And it's, you kind of basically conjure up these different feelings and emotional states and just, kind of sit back and watch what's happening. And reflect on the fact that, each one of these states, whether happiness, anger, sadness, jealousy, they don't have an origin. They don't have a permanent state in my body, and they're going to pass. And it sounds so cliche, right? But it's very profound, when we start to recognize that, because I also, I would very much believe my emotional states when they arose, and still do sometimes. But I was actually talking with a client about this today, that there were times that I would start to have a feeling, this kind of like feeling of a little bit like angst, anxiety, just kind of tucked away somewhere in my body, and I would immediately like spotlight to that and be like, what's going on? What's happening? I have to figure this out. I have to, like, what's the origin of this? Like,
Right.
really, really get into it. And like we were talking about earlier, we would just kind of pile it on. Like, what is this feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And that's torture, right? It's torture because I've never found an origin. Right? I've maybe found like, okay, yeah, I've had some traumas, I've had some, identity related stuff, but there's never like the root other than, my ignorance around my emotional state and my mind. And so, being able to reflect on like, okay, that's a feeling. I don't like that feeling. That's uncomfortable. Right. That's there. And just letting it kind of be there. And pass, because as he said, it's self-liberated. It passes on its own.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you saying that you actually practice developing, like not developing, but like you like in the practice that you're intentionally evoking these feelings?
Yeah, you are. You're like bringing, it's a little tough. I know it's really like going to the places you don't want to go. But it's worth it. It's really worth it. And ultimately, you're safe on your cushion.
Yeah.
And especially, if you have a teacher who you're working with closely, like being able to talk about those experiences, it's good. It's helped for sure.
That's awesome. Well, it was Mind at Ease.
Mind at Ease. Yeah, it is. It's really, really fantastic. He kind of goes through all these different levels of meditation, and starting with like the Lam Rim, so stages of the path, and kind of like the basics, and then he gets a little bit deeper. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing. I wrote it down.
Of course. Well, hey, what do you think? Should we check in on the next topic we had for tonight?
Depends. What is it?
We're going to talk about renunciation.
Ew, no, let's stay with equanimity.
No renunciation, scary.
No, that's a right. Like
I want to, yeah.
It feels like it, I only. I'm joking because it feels like renunciation feels like saying no to something that you want,
doesn't it? Yeah.
Right. Like that's what it seems like. When in reality, at least within our tradition, I think renunciation really is about having the like this determination, like to be free from all of the causes of suffering, right? And for ourselves and others. I actually was interested in I brought up the idea of renunciation mainly because Matthew Cruz said something the other night about this that really like it stuck in my mind, as a lot of what he says actually does. It kind of lingers for a while. And what he said was something to the effect of renunciation is what compassion looks like on the inside. So like compassion, we call it compassion when it's out there, but when it's in here, it's renunciation. And that really just like, I was like, what? I've never drawn any kind of correlation between compassion and renunciation. So it's hard to say that word, but yeah. And so that really got me thinking, right? Like what really is it? What are we talking about with renunciation? And I think it is that it's this this deep desire to free ourselves of all this, the causes of all this suffering, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really, that idea that it's compassion for ourselves really rings true to me, because, I've been reflecting a lot the last few weeks in my meditation practice around just how much reputation, having a good reputation, which is one of the 8 worldly concerns, how much that one, it really has kind of like a stranglehold on me. Yeah. And so I've been imagining, what would it be like if I could just put that burden down, the burden of feeling like I need to be liked, and the things that I do to be liked, and, just all of the anxieties and pressures that I put on myself to, have this thing that is so wishy-washy, because people are changing their minds every day. Right. And people are dealing with their own internal stuff every day, and so aren't going to like you as much as the other day. And so I could get this tiny glimmer, I was almost visualizing myself in some way, making that desire for good reputation into an object, like a very heavy object. And what if I could just set that down? Yeah. And there was this really beautiful kind of, sense of just freedom and peace. And I do think that that's what renunciation is that, we're giving something up, but what we're getting in return is freedom. Yeah. And what more could I really want than freedom? Real freedom from this just it feels just like such a toxic state of mind, what I put myself in all the time. So yeah, I love that idea of it being the internal compassion. Yeah, that made me, and it was actually, I think that just that idea made me want to consider renunciation a little bit more. Like it really, like I really was just more like, no, I'm not gonna. I know later. But like there's something quite attractive about compassion, right? Compassion for others and compassion for ourselves. We want that bodhicitta that we're trying to develop here, right? It is this compassion, this deep desire to be free of suffering, both ourselves and others, right? To attain enlightenment so that we can be free and help others be free.
And so that relationship to renunciation, I think, is yeah, it's inspiring, right? And it made me actually, I found something by Pema Chodron about renunciation. Is it all right if I read it?
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
All right. Let's see if I got it up here. All right. She says that, so renunciation is seeing clearly how we hold back, how we pull away, how we shut down, how we close off, and then learning how to open. It's about saying yes to whatever is put on your plate, whatever knocks on your door, whatever calls you up on your telephone. How we actually do that has to do with coming up against our edge, which is actually the moment when we learn what renunciation means. Yeah. 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 I like that it's this, like, basically I think it, from what I kind of gather is that it's like, so like we have this, we already have this Buddha nature. We're already good, right? Like Lama says, right? Like we're starting from that spot, like not from an imperfect state, right? We're already good. And so like renunciation is letting go of all the shit that's not that. Right. And so like, it's really like, it's nothing more than just like basic hygiene, right? It's just like cleaning all the dirt and being like, oh, there it is. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier, right? Like the jealousy and the feelings of wanting to be recognized and all of that, right? Those are our edges. Like when we see it, when we hit it, we can see it, and then we can be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to layer heaps of extra, anger on top of my jealousy. I'm just going to see it and be friends with it and just like be like, yeah, that's that, right?
Yeah. Oh, and just to give ourselves a break. I think I don't know why that came up for me, but just that feeling of like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that.
No,
I don't need to go down that road. That road sucks. I've been down that road a million times and I know what's there. What's
right.
the story in AA? Isn't it? There's like this wonderful poem that is often recited in AA about, how this person is, they're going down this road. They find a hole in the road. They fall into the hole. They get out, go down the same road. They see it, but they still fall in. Right. And the next time they go down the same road, they walk around it. But then the very last time, right, they're like, how about I just not go down that road?
Right. I hate that story.
Yeah, what about it?
I don't, not anymore, but I used to just be like, well, screw it. I'm just going to build my house at the bottom. I can't, I'm too dumb to choose another street. I won't walk around it. I'm jumping in willfully, that's just like where I'm like, no, I got my eyes wide open. I see the hole. I'm not falling in, I'm jumping in, and so I guess I want to be in a hole, right? I don't think I want to be in a hole, but I am, and I'm going to stay there. So I don't like that story for that reason, but it is actually a really good, it totally, hits the nail on the head as far as like what we're doing and what renunciation is. Renunciation is saying like, hey, I don't think I'm going to do that because I see where it goes.
Well, and it's also, because I've also been that kind of like bitter, like I know what I'm doing and I want to do it. So F you type thing.
That's right.
And that's also a hole. that in itself is going down, that street or whatever.
That's right.
And we think that we're so tough and aware and like, but that in itself is the trap. So like renunciation is really hard for me too, because it means that I have to have hope. Yeah. Which is something that's hard for me. I tend to be a little bit despairing, which is funny because Lama, the name that he gave me when I took refuge, is Yeshilaki, which means goddess of joy.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, he kind of gives people names where it's like, this is what you're here to work on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so renunciation for me is like, you know what? I got to put down that bitterness that thinks I know everything, because I can have a real kind of like, just sarcastic and caustic type of approach to life, or that's what I did have. And
Yeah.
being able to see like, actually there is hope and joy and beyond hope, right? It's like genuine discovery. And so that's, I definitely have found it to be more of a giving back rather than letting go of something. And but I used to also have that kind of like, nope, don't want to go there, because then that means that I actually have to stop drinking or stop lying or be aware of those patterns, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that those things that you talk about are the things that cut us off,
Yes.
right? They are the things that dampen or cover up our Buddha nature, right? And it's like I don't know, it's like a form of ignorance or something, where we're just like, now I'm gonna hold on to this, like I'm gonna hold on to this, whatever it is. But like, if we can have some awareness around it, some equanimity, right? Like to sort of be like, yeah, okay, I see this. And then to recognize that like that aim, because it's easy. I know like your whole life work is, helping other people out of their messes, right? Out of all the troubles, all their sticky things, all the things that cut them off from life, right? Like it's easy, right? It's easy to help other people and to believe in their ability to get out of that freaking hole. You're like, yeah, there's a hole in a street and you've got this, like you could get out of the hole. I'm going to help you out and you can go down that other street. I'll even give you directions. I'll walk hand in hand with you, all of that. But when it comes to you, oh no, not me. No, like I'm stuck. I'm
bad.
all that crap, right? All that crap. And it's like, and it's like what a relief renunciation is, right?
Yes.
What a relief to be like, no, I don't
I
have to do that, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to be so self-seeking. I don't need this. I did none of it, right? It's not serving me. It's not serving others. And in fact, it's cutting me off from the very thing that I wish for the most, which is, to be awake, to be present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to have some joy, to enjoy life, to really feel it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not so like, even though it's sad, it's weird, right? Because that like, it's a little trap. This like, well, you're gonna have to let go of all those things, right? That bring you temporary happiness.
Uh-huh.
So that you can experience long-lasting real happiness, right? And there's just some skeptical part of our brains.
Yes, indeed.
Like, I'm not so sure about this. Let me just hold on. Maybe just one more time. Maybe I just jump in the hole. This time the hole will work out.
This time the hole will have a trampoline at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right out.
Totally. Right. I've never seen one, but I'm sure this time.
Someday.
Exactly.
Oh man, well, speaking of skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
that was another thing that we were gonna talk about tonight. Now we've got about 10 minutes left, but I'm curious, what role might skepticism play in your spiritual practice?
A decent amount. Yeah. So I would say that it's kind of like that equanimity thing where my general tendency towards apathy and indifference gave way to something that's a little bit like healthier. I'd say that my cynical view on things has given way to more like just healthy skepticism, right? That actually before it was more like I knew that everything else was wrong and that there was no hope and it was bleak and I knew that, and so everybody else who was singing some other tune was just full of crap and like whatever, they're just like smoking that hopium or whatever it is, and just like, so there was that sort of attitude, I think, initially, whereas, I still maintain a rather skeptical attitude towards things, in the sense that I don't just like buy into whatever, even all of the Buddhist stuff, right? Like, it's not it actually, like, my experience with Buddhism as a whole was not one of like skepticism, right? I really was just sort of cynical about all of it. I'm like, it's just like the rest of it. I don't really care. It's another philosophy to make people feel okay or whatever, and it's not going to work. And so I had this general sort of like avoidance, I was just like, no, I'm not. But then it was really through observation of others and application of really basic principles, including, basic practices such as meditation, that started to soften up, and so like it became a lot less cynical and a lot more just sort of like open, right? Where I'm like, oh, like, I'm not going to go ahead and buy into all of this. And I'm glad I didn't. I really am, because I would have got the wrong view. I'm not saying I have the right view now, but I definitely would have had the wrong view if I had bought into the whole thing on faith, right? Based upon what I knew at the time. Because what I've come to understand is that nothing that I thought was going on is what's going on. It's not, things aren't the way that I thought they were. And so I need to like stay a little bit more open to the possibilities. But I do think there's like a sort of like a, I don't know, there's like a balancing act there, because you do also have to have a modicum of faith, right? I don't know, like, I don't know exactly how much of a role that plays, but it's faith based upon my own experience, and I'm down with that. I feel like that's really the only way forward for me, is to, like, to have the experience, to see it and be like, oh, okay, that's good. That works, right? Yeah. It's sort of like that, the famous sutra, where the Buddha's talking about, like, not believing things just because it's in a scripture, or just because it's logically deduced or whatever, like it's gotta sort of like all add up. But that there's actually room, if I remember, there's like room in there for faith, in the sense that, like, it said something to the effect of like knowing things to be good myself, right? So there's that part of it, which is what I've experienced, right? So I see it for what it is in my own life, and I'm like, oh, well, that works well. I'm going to keep doing that, right? So there's that part of it. But then there was this other part, which was like, this is something that wise people promote. And that's something, like, part of my cynicism was like, no, there isn't anybody who is wise. No such thing, right? Like, everybody's in the same mess, and nobody knows better, and there is no way out, and nobody, that kind of hopeless sort of attitude. When in fact, there are plenty of people who are incredibly wise, right? And I'm not even talking about Buddhists, right? I'm just talking, there are wise people, and wise people will oftentimes promote things that are the same, like the basic principles of Buddhism, right? Right. So yeah. I guess cynicism has given way to healthy skepticism, which I retain and I like. I don't see, I think it has plays an important role. I don't want to buy into any of it just because somebody said that's how it is. What about you? You're an anarchist, right? Like, you're not buying into things.
Well, that I think is it was the trajectory for me as well, where I in high school really started feeling very like disaffected by the political climate and the religion that I was raised in, and just kind of seeing the false veneer of everything, and no one really seemed to be authentic or telling the truth. And so I just got in that kind of like rage mode, like punk rock mode of, no, all of this is dumb, this is stupid, just F everything that's established, right? Like, screw any authority. There is no authority. Kind of like what you said, no one actually knows what they're doing. They're all just lying and using their power to keep people in control. Yeah. And so definitely very, very heavy cynicism for a long time. But also for me is that when I came into to the temple, there was this recognition that and you know, I can think of other people before the temple, like meeting folks who felt like, okay, that's an authentic place of being, and I want that. I want to be authentic myself. And so being able to meet people like that, and then to meet Lama and other people at the temple who are willing to be open about their stuff, and transparent, and so that was really cool for me, because it was like, okay, you know, I dig that. I really want to be around people who aren't just bullshitting it. I don't want any bullshit. I don't.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
And so that felt really healthy for me. You know, it just felt like this is something that like, I don't need to hide myself. I don't need to do anything to try and prove myself, even though of course I do still try and do that, right? But I think that for me is where it shifted more towards healthy skepticism, where it's like, well, what do I see in the people who are around me and practicing this, you know? And you know, the people that I'm close to here, you know.
Yeah.
And I've really been able to see some of my friends transform, you know, and really, and myself transform. And so that coming back to experience, you know, what have I experienced that I can have faith in? And then also, yeah, just really feeling like the power of people who are farther ahead of along me on the path, where it's like, oh, I can actually feel when I'm in like some people's presence, that yeah, there's a lot happening there, and there's a lot that we can do and become. And so yeah, it's not just on faith alone, it's being able to feel that real deep presence that a teacher offers us. So yeah, it's like, what is my lived experience?
That's
And
right.
that's right. Yeah.
That's
And
exactly it. Yeah,
yeah.
you have faith based upon your own experience, right? Which one of the things that you talked about was transparency. And I recall, so like the guy that started the Skeptics magazine, there's this quote attributed to him where he talks about skepticism is applying logic and reasoning to everything with no sacred cows. And I just got to say, like, I love the fact that I have yet to discover a sacred cow in our tradition. You know, there isn't anything off limits, right? You want to explore something, you have a thought, you have a question, you have a doubt, a concern, let's talk about it, right? Like, bring it up, let's all point at it and let's shed some light on there, look at it, right? Like, I haven't seen any indication that there's anything off limits at all. Have you?
No, really, no.
It's wide open. Come at, bring it.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? Like, that's not my experience with religion.
Right. No, I know. And that's what makes it not a cult, right?
That's right.
We had that question a few weeks ago. Is this a cult? And yeah, in cults, it's like, yeah, everything's protected and shut down, and there's certain things you can't bring up, and everything's just got this air of secrecy. And so I love it. Yeah, this openness, this transparency, this willing to put ourselves out there and under the spotlight and examine these things within ourselves.
Right. What an interesting property for an esoteric tradition, right? The esoteric meaning that is somewhat hidden, concealed, right?
Right.
So why is it so fascinating, right? Like, because you come into it thinking, oh, there's all kinds of secrets and all kinds of things that, like you got to like stick around to find out about. It turns out like, nope, it's a wide open book.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so awesome.
Oh
I'm so happy to be on this journey with you, Daniel. I'm always so grateful. I feel that rejuvenation happening.
Me too. I was just talking to a friend about it today, and I was just saying, like, it doesn't really matter what we talk about, how many people are there, or whatever. None of that matters. Like, my takeaway is like, afterward, I always feel really good.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jack. I appreciate it. Look at, I started my day all angry and pissed off, and here I am all smiling and happy. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's so good.
Thanks. I appreciate you, buddy.
I appreciate you too, buddy. Yeah, thank you. And
Thank
many
you.
blessings to all. And let's see you. Oh, are you gone next week, Daniel?
I'm gone next week.
Okay, so I think we're reconvening in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. See you then.
It is. All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.